Alright, so hello and welcome back. So today I thought we'd try something out. We're gonna watch Epic History TV's The Whole Napoleonic series, so don't expect this to be a weekly occurrence of these videos, maybe once a week. But we're gonna watch all of them, so that's around that's hours of content, and we're going to be giving my reaction as a military historian. I have only watched little bits and pieces of these. I have not watched them all, so I hope you will stick around and enjoy them with me as I explain some more military in-depth things that you might not understand with this series, because it is quite complex, especially for someone that has no idea what a lot of these military terms are. So here we go. So we'll start in 1793 with the Siege of Toulon, the beginning of the Napoleonic Wars.
An Epic History TV History March collaboration, supported by our sponsor, Osprey Publishing. In the summer of 1793, the French Revolution was entering its fourth year, and France was on the verge of anarchy. In Paris, political extremists had seized control of the revolution. They guillotined the king and imposed a reign of terror that dealt summary justice to all suspected enemies of the revolution. Hoping to unify the new republic, France's leaders had declared war on the Habsburg Empire.
This is a common theme. If you're having troubles at home, just declare war on someone, so that way everyone can unify behind them. And this is 1793, so the Napoleonic era you can summarize it beginning with when he actually takes power, or you can start in the French Revolution, really. Because it all combines into basically just the same thing, the wars that just continuously happen for France. So yeah, France is having the French Revolution. Very messy time, a lot of people dying, a lot of aristocracy dying, and it's basically a peasant republic. More or less, and then people rebel because they don't like it, because they start doing weird stuff like condemning the church and making like the cult of reason and stuff like that. And France is very heavily Catholic. Even today, it is still Catholic, and back then it was heavily Catholic, so doing that was a big no-no.
But the conflict quickly widened, and soon France was facing the combined might of Europe's leading powers, determined to stamp out her dangerous political experiment.
Now, what they say, stamp out a dangerous political experiment. They had killed their king, King Louis, and they're a democracy. They're a republic, kind of. And every single one of these countries that you see is a monarchy. So what do they do when they kill the king of France? They're like, no, we can't let this happen. If this happens here, it's going to start spreading to our countries. We can't let that happen. So they declare war, rightfully so.
Meanwhile, whole regions of France had come out in open revolt, horrified by the new extremism of the revolution.
And the extremism was really centered around Paris, France. A lot of the other countries were not with it. Again, this is Brittany up here, got some near Bordeaux, and then we got down here in Vichy. They're just not with it. It's, again, divisive issue, but Paris is the main hotbed of it.
In August, the Republic suffered a further, potentially fatal blow when the city of Toulon joined the revolt. Toulon was France's largest and most important naval base in the south, home to a third of the entire French Navy. But now, rebels welcomed their old enemy, the British Royal Navy, into the port.
Yeah, that's going to be devastating. If a third of your Navy is there and it's your largest supply stores, you can't afford to do that. Now, again, the status of the French Navy at this point is, well, not very good. But it is still up there with the great powers in terms of naval. Not Great Britain, obviously, but still up there. And if you just lose a third of it to an uprising, that's really bad.
Led by Admiral Lord Hood, aboard HMS Victory. It was an extraordinary coup. Without a shot being fired, the Allies had crippled French naval power in the Mediterranean and gained a vital toehold on the French coast. All French forces in the area were immediately diverted to face this new threat and lay siege to the rebel port. 19,000 troops in all, But since most French officers had been aristocrats who were now fleeing the revolution in large numbers, they were seriously short of professional leadership. Their commander, General Jean-François Carteau, was a loyal Republican, but a court painter by trade with no military training. To make matters worse, one of his few professional officers, his artillery commander, Colonel Dommartin, had been badly wounded on the approach to Toulon.
So let's just talk about that. So during the revolution, there were a lot of killing of the aristocracy. To be an officer in the French army, you had to come from the aristocracy. There was no way otherwise. You could not physically be promoted unless you were from an aristocratic family. Doesn't matter how good you are, you cannot be promoted. A lot of Napoleon's marshals, which you'll find out, were in the army, and they made it to like sergeant, and they joined at like 16 or 14, and they made it as high as they could, but they could not be promoted to officers because of the way the French army was structured, the Royal Army before the Revolution. After the Revolution, promotion slots open up for a lot of these marshals to become officers, lieutenants, colonels, everything. And as they stated, there's no officers because all the aristocracy is either dead or leaving, and when that happens, you do not have a very effective unit at all. Your officers are back then, especially, I repeat myself, it was vitally important to have officers leading these men because the officers were actually professional soldiers in the modern day sense. They knew what was going on. They knew how to read and write, which, well, again, in the 1800s and in 1793, reading and writing was not a given. So being able to read and write, relay orders, know movements, know tactics, and all that stuff was vitally important. As you said, this guy, he's a general, but he was a painter by trade before the revolution, and definitely loyal to the revolution, but that doesn't mean shit when you're facing modern armies with actual officers. And then again, his other officer was killed here, so yeah, it's not looking very good.
His artillery commander, Colonel Dommartin, had been badly wounded on the approach to Toulon. Antoine Salicetti, a Corsican deputy of the National Convention in Paris, recommended as his replacement a fellow countryman, a 24-year-old artillery officer who was passing Toulon en route to the front, named Napoleon Bonaparte.
Now, being 24 as a captain, that's actually not that extreme, honestly. Depends when he joined, again. Today, if you get a college degree, you can become a lieutenant by age 22, and maybe you could push it to 20 if you somehow graduated high school at 16. So him being a captain at this point is not that bad. He has the training to be a captain.
Or Bonaparte. Bonaparte was a professional soldier, but he'd seen almost no active service. Nevertheless, Salicetti was impressed by his manner, and most of all, his politics. Bonaparte had just written a political pamphlet, a short story about a young artillery officer who berates his fellow diners for their disloyalty to the Republic. General Carteau thought it wise to accept Deputy Salicetti's recommendation.
One can remain 24 or just to say 36 hours without eating, but one cannot remain 3 minutes without gunpowder. True, you can survive a very long time without eating. Might be discomfortable, but if you run out of ammunition, it's over very fucking quickly.
The great port of Toulon was well defended by city walls and a dozen outlying forts and redoubts. They were held by 2,000 British soldiers and sailors, 6,000 Spanish troops, 6,000 Neapolitans, and 800 Sardinians. Artillery would be the key to overcoming these formidable defenses.
So just taking a look, this already looks very fucking hard to do. They have rivers, they have high positions, and then they have another river, or stream at this point. They have the British Navy's completely able to continuously get them supplies. They're not blockaded. They have, again, on the other side, the exact same thing. And then in the city, they have star forts and also a river and like water to protect them. So it's going to be a bitch to siege this out.
But when Bonaparte was put in command of the artillery on the 16th of September, he found himself with few cannon, not enough trained gun crews, and a shortage of gunpowder and shot. With relentless energy and determination, Bonaparte transformed the situation, requisitioning unused guns, training infantrymen to work them, setting up a new forge and workshop, and arranging transport from Marseille of 100,000 sandbags for constructing new batteries. Through hard work, he was ultimately able to build his force up to 64 officers and 1,500 men, manning 100 cannon, howitzers, and mortars.
64 officers for 1,500 men. Think about that ratio. 64 officers for 1,500 men. That's around the ratio that's needed. So, like, one man in today's army is in control of 48 as an officer, and then 2, 3, 5 officers for 128 men in total. So it's not far off. To get 100 guns is what you need 100 guns for this.
Within days, Bonaparte had established 2 new forward batteries with good revolutionary names, La Montagne and Sans Culottes.
Okay, so he put them on this hill. So he's moving his artillery to put them on this hill. Why is he doing that? Very simple. If you can have higher elevation, you can shoot further, back in this time. And it's a more defensive location in case enemy infantry try to sort you out. Also, up here, you can start bombarding the British fleet. You can start hitting this side, and you can start hitting the fort down here if you have the range.
Which brought Toulon's inner harbour within range, and forced Admiral Hood to move all his ships closer to the port. Bonaparte also came up with a plan, one that would allow the French to bypass most of Toulon's defences and secure the rapid victory the Republic so desperately needed. Bonaparte argued that if Fort L'Aiguillette could be captured, which looked out across the harbour, he could fill it with heavy guns and shell the British and Spanish fleet at anchor.
Makes total sense. If you can take this position, first of all, the British fleet, if you can start shelling them, they have either 2 choices. Sit there and die, or go into the Toulon, or 3, or somehow sortie out, take this out, which isn't going to happen, or sortie out and leave. And that's what you want to do if they have control of the seas. It's a very valid option, because there's only 2 points in here, and the other point is there, and if they can have a range to shoot you, it's going to be bad. This also would allow them to cut off food supply to Toulon, because they can't receive any supplies by ship. Now, that doesn't fix the problem for land, but that's a different issue.
Admiral Hood would be forced to abandon the port and take with him the Allied soldiers that Toulon relied on for its defense.
Now, that is key. I did not know that they would pull their soldiers out. If they pull their soldiers out, yeah, this gets a hell of a lot easier.
General Carteau saw the merits of Bonaparte's plan, and on the 22nd of September, French forces attacked Montcaire. But to Bonaparte's exasperation, while he'd argued for an attack by 3,000 men, the indecisive Carteau committed only 400. Not only was the attack easily repulsed, but it alerted the Allies to the danger.
Yeah, you only get one chance. Now they know they're coming, they're going to reinforce his position if they can.
Within 48 hours, they'd reinforced Montcaire with thousands more troops and built a new fort named Fort Mulgrave, bristling with 20 cannon. The position was now so strong, the French nicknamed it Little Gibraltar.
There's only one possible plan, Bonaparte's. Yeah.
Finally, in mid-November, an experienced professional soldier arrived to take command of French forces, General Dugommier. He saw at once that Bonaparte's plan was the only way to take Toulon, and gave it his full backing. Bonaparte, promoted to major, got to work, overseeing construction of several more batteries.
So now he's a major. Think about that. That's not even a year after he's been promoted to captain, he's now a major.
In preparation for the decisive assault.
And again, the general had to be replaced with an actual soldier that knew what the fuck he was doing. So if you have a very good officer cadre, you can perform miracles.
One forward battery was so exposed to enemy fire that men refused to be sent there. So Bonaparte renamed it La Batterie des Hommes Sans Peur, the battery of men without fear. And suddenly, there was no shortage of volunteers.
I wish you could do that today, that'd be pretty fucking funny.
It was an early display of Napoleon's genius for inspiring his soldiers, one that would serve him well in the years ahead. On the 30th of November, the Allied Land Forces commander, British General Charles O'Hara, tried to seize back the initiative, leading an assault on the new French batteries facing Fort Malbousquet. At first, the attack was successful. The batteries were overrun, the French guns spiked.
So when he says the French guns were spiked, basically that means you put an object into the gun and then you fire it and it blows the hell up. Or, at least what I remember, that is called spiking the gun. So they did in Band of Brothers. You could also do it temporarily to where you just shove something down the barrel so they can't use it too. So.
A counterattack with much greater numbers, and led in person by General Dugommier and Major Bonaparte, drove back the Allies.
Now you may ask why they did this whole sorting thing. It's very simple. He wants to take the guns out. If he can and break this position. Not actually win, no, I don't think so, but actually just break this position and then go back. And it's a valid thing if you have surprise and you have the numbers to do so, which he did it.
General O'Hara himself was shot through the hand and captured. 12 years before, he'd surrendered to George Washington at Yorktown during the American War of Independence. Now he got to surrender to Napoleon Bonaparte.
Probably not a very good look on his generalship at that point. Among those who distinguished themselves are, and who gave me most help in rallying the men and leading them forward, were Citizen Bonaparte, Commandant of the Artillery, and General de Gaume of the Minister of War. So yeah, Citizen Bonaparte.
In the early hours of the 18th of December, in howling wind and driving rain, the French launched a major assault on Fort Mulgrave. The wet conditions made muskets useless except as clubs or with bayonets. Bonaparte led the second wave in person. Amid fierce hand-to-hand fighting, his horse was killed under him, and he was bayoneted in the thigh by a British sergeant, a wound that came within inches of ending his life and radically changing the course of history.
Yeah, I mean, if that was a few more inches up and hit his main artery, he's dead. And then don't have Napoleonic Wars. Yeah, we probably have something else, but yeah.
Finally, the Allied garrison was overwhelmed, and Mulgrave fell to the French.
And this is important too. Napoleon is leading from the front. Again, he went in the second wave, so he's not being stupid. And the enemy's already engaged, so he goes in there to help reassure their lines. This will change over the course of Napoleonic Wars in his mentality, but in the beginning, he did lead from the front.
Fort L'Aiguillette and Tour de la Balaquière were soon also in French hands. By the following afternoon, the French had 10 heavy guns in L'Aiguillette, placing the Allied ships within range. Admiral Hood could not expose his valuable ships of the line to such a threat. He had no option but to order an immediate evacuation of the fleet and garrison from Toulon. Small Spanish and British teams raced to destroy all the French ships and naval stores that they couldn't take with them. But amid the chaos of their departure, 18 ships of the line were allowed to fall back into French hands. A badly missed opportunity.
That's a massively missed opportunity. So when he says 18 ships of the line, those are the equivalent of battleships back in this era. that 18 of them. They're not still tiny ships. They're big boys, and not burning those 18 is going to probably come to bite them in the ass.
Many French citizens of Toulon were desperate to escape aboard the Allied ships, knowing that the Republicans would inflict terrible reprisals on the city. British and Spanish ships took as many as they could, about 14,000 in all, but scores were drowned amid chaotic and desperate scenes. Others were left to face the wrath of the revolution.
14,000 being taken with them is a very substantial number. I mean, again, these ships are not that big. You fit like a couple hundred guys on there. Like a big ship probably fit 600 guys on it. You just start putting 14,000. Yeah, it's gonna be very cramped.
Republican troops entered the city the next morning, and executions and firing squads began almost immediately. For the next 2 weeks, about 200 were executed every day.
Yeah, that's a significant amount. So for the next 2 weeks, that's 1,400 people dying. So 2,800 people executed.
Allied propaganda later blamed Bonaparte for the atrocities, but there's no evidence he was directly involved.
My predictions were exactly fulfilled, such is the history of this event, which will so greatly astonish Europe and has never been understood. Napoleon Bonaparte.
France's young republic was now fighting back on all fronts. And with the fall of Toulon, the Allies had lost a golden opportunity, a chance to stir up further revolt, deal a lasting blow to French naval power, perhaps even overturn the revolution.
Yeah, probably might have happened there.
But instead, the French Republic had weathered one of its greatest storms. In no small part, thanks to the remarkable judgment, energy and courage of one 24-year-old artillery officer, now promoted Brigadier General in recognition of his extraordinary service at Toulon.
So, just to use the American equivalency, that's him going from an 04, so major, to Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel, Brigadier General. So it's going up 3 ranks. That's going to a 07, which is very high. That's ridiculous for a 24-year-old to be promoted to a general. Let's just put it that way. Mostly unheard of, but Napoleon was that good, and he was that genius.
Napoleon Bonaparte had taken his first step on the path to greatness. And for Europe, 21 years of almost constant war awaited. Our sponsor, Osprey Publishing, has nearly 200 titles on the...
So I think the rest of it is just an ad. So I will leave their thing in the description that you should go check out, because again, they're basically just books, and they're going to detail a lot more of the stuff that's not covered in the video, and obviously all of them. But hope you liked it. We will continue to watch all of these as long as you guys keep enjoying it. We're going to be watching a lot of them, probably because there's a lot to cover for the Napoleonic Wars, and I can hopefully help you understand some of the military tactics besides that. Other than that, please leave a like. I'll see you people next time for the next video. See you people later.